Delaware County Commissioner meeting for September 30th, 2021 is now in session. Would you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Gary Merrill, President of the Board. To my left is Commissioner Barb Lewis, Vice President, and to my right is fellow Commissioner Jeff Benton. Deputy Administrator Don Houston is with us as well as our clerks, Jennifer and Sarah. With that, Sarah, let's proceed.
Resolution number 21-903, in the matter of approving the electronic record of proceedings from regular meeting held September 27th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-903. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
We have no public comment this morning. Resolution number 21-904, in the matter of approving the purchase orders, then and now certificates and payments of warrants in batch number CMA PR 0929 and memo transfers in batch numbers MTA PR 0929.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-904. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-905, in the matter of a transfer liquor license request from Ruby Tuesday Incorporated to Condado Tacos 31 LLC and forwarding to the Ohio Division of Liquor Control with no objections and no request for a hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-905. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-906, and the matter of extending the filing date for the filing of plans, reports, and schedules for the Hoover number 61 drainage improvement petition filed by Tony and Christy Hill and others.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-906. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-907, and the matter of extending the filing date for the filing of plans, reports, and schedules for the Dustin Road drainage improvement petition filed by Kurt D. Vogel.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-907. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-908, and the matter of approving a request for competitive sealed proposals for the Delaware County Video Production Services.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Benton. Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jane Hawes, Director of Communications. I have before you an RFP that I'm seeking approval for. In the interest of efficiency, I would like to consolidate all of the projects that we have been doing for videos in the last couple years into one annual contract. And in order to do that, we do need to put this out to bid. So I've sort of outlined, I think the projects I'm anticipating would be similar, but a bit expanded from what we have been doing in the past. And I entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments? Vote.
Vote on motion 21-908. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution number 21-909, in the matter of approving an easement in right of use to the Delaware County Land Reutilization Corporation for the communications utility connections to the old jail property.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, Eric Hostetler, staff attorney. The land bank is in the process of closing the transaction to convey the jail to the Historical Society, and we were asked whether there were any utility easements that might be needed for ongoing use for that property. There is a fiber line that serves the jail from the Carnegie building currently, and that will be terminated. There is an existing conduit running from our utility fiber line to the jail, and we would be providing an easement for them to utilize that at some point in the future.
Any questions or comments? Vote.
Vote on motion 21-909. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
We'll be jumping ahead to item number 10 on page 547. Resolution number 21-910, in the matter of appointing Sheila Hiddleston, Health Commissioner for the Delaware County Public Health District, to establish a drug overdose fatality review committee and a suicide fatality review committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
So, Don Houston, Deputy Administrator, good morning.
This resolution would appoint Sheila Hiddleston, the county's health commissioner, to this, this board that would be established to basically begin a drug overdose fatality review committee that would review drug overdose deaths and opioid-involved deaths that occur in the county. And Sheila would essentially be the one that would start this review committee and oversee the committee. And it's something that's new with the Ohio Revised Code, and we recommend your approval.
Any questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-910. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
With that, I believe we have a hearing at 10 o'clock. Let's go ahead and do reports. Don, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to report today.
Commissioner Benton, you may want to update us on a particular athletic event that everybody knows about but you, but we kind of...
For those of you who were slow to view the finals of the Ryder Cup, the USA did win the Ryder Cup.
Monday night in your household, apparently.
Apparently, well, it was Monday, yeah.
I got a text
Monday.
about 9 o'clock that they won, so...
Well, I had a lot of video to catch up on, so I was a little behind. But the Americans did win, and they won by the largest margin in the history of the Ryder Cup, 19 points to 9.
Wow.
So it was a very strong victory. For those of you who saw the course, Whistling Straits was an amazing course right on the banks of Lake Michigan. And it was just a very unusual course.
It's really a perfect course for that kind of event.
It actually reminded you of a links-style course from Scotland, Ireland, et cetera. But anyway, great event. Very proud of the Americans. They did really well. They had 6 rookies, which is like a record too. So anyway.
Now, the question, would they still be rookies on Monday night after determining it on Sunday? That's a question, I think, probably.
They were rookies for this entire Ryder Cup.
Okay.
So yes, but good question.
Something to think about, something to ponder.
So, you know, aside from that, the other stuff's kind of routine. Ryder Cup was a big event. But anyway, we had the OCCO reception last night at the State House, well attended. Always good to talk to a bunch of the legislators and other county commissioners and so on. Route 23 webinar we had yesterday, and this is getting, you know, starting the process to figure out how to divert traffic from Route 23, kind of in the corridor from Waldo to 270. And there's some big ideas being contemplated, you know, going west of Delaware and connecting into 33, or going east of Delaware, connecting into Route 71 with a new interchange or two. And but again, this is the very beginning stages of a very long process, and I'm sure whatever ends up happening will be a very expensive and long construction program. But it is very important that we take care of traffic on 23 for economic development, for, you know, congestion, for the residents, travel. I mean, it just, you know, just a lot of reasons why it needs to be taken care of. And so the process next year, they will work on phase 2, which is actually kind of framing out some design or some initial designs on which corridor to use, which new proposal. So we'll see where that goes. One of the things that came up was what I call the northeast bypass of the city of Delaware, and that's going from 36 up to 23 around the northeast quadrant of the city. We're going to start that project a little bit by you know, next year, putting in the Glen Parkway extension from 36 up to 521. So that's a beginning of that project. And I think that would really help a lot to have that project in place before some of these other really big, really expensive projects that may come forward, because I think that would divert a lot of the traffic that's going from Toledo to Columbus to 71, because they can go down 36 and out 36 over to 71, particularly with the second interchange being in process at 71. So anyway, good discussions. ODOT's leading the charge on that. Delaware County is right in the middle of it. There were a number of participants from the various townships and villages and cities impacted by it. So it was good to see. SAPCO board meeting tomorrow, and that's it.
Commissioner Lewis?
I have nothing to report.
I'll make it quick. I was unable to attend the ODOT meeting that Commissioner Benton alluded to. I was at the ARPA symposium yesterday with some of my fellow people here in fact, they're all here, Karen and Eric and Don. So it was a long day, but it was informative, and out of that, I think some ideas and plans will be put together on how we use our funds that we will be receiving. And the legislative event last night that was well attended, Lieutenant Governor spoke briefly, and such a beautiful building, our State House. And with that, I really have nothing else today. We have about 18 minutes before we can start our hearing, so unless there's an objection, I'm just going, yes.
I suggest maybe we adjourn into executive session for employment and compensation.
Think we can do that in 18 minutes?
We can do that now and then come back
With that
later for the other
understanding,
item.
I'm good with that. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
So let's do it.
Resolution number 21-911, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment, compensation of a public employee or public official.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-911. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
So we will be in executive session until approximately 10 o'clock, and then we will return. Ready?
Resolution number 21-912, in the matter of adjourning out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-912. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
So we'll proceed to the hearing.
Resolution number 21-913, public hearing for consideration of the Chancel Gate Drainage Improvement Petition filed by Stephen Corby and others.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-913. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-914, in the matter of approving for a specific occurrence a suspension of Rule 3, speaker registration, Rule 4, limitations, and Rule 7, public comment procedure from the rules governing public comment before the Board of County Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-914. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Okay, thank you for your patience, first of all. We appreciate it. We were meeting a little longer than we were anticipating. I'm just going to kind of read the guidelines, kind of the roadmap that we're going to follow today, so that we're all on the same page. There's a sign-in sheet that's circulating the room. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to sign it. It may be out front if you don't have it in your possession in here. We will hear a report from the county engineer and Soil and Water Conservation District. We will then respond to any questions the board might have from that report. And those speaking for or against the petition must be either an owner, as defined in section 6131.01 of the revised code, or an attorney speaking on behalf of an owner. We'll hear first of all from those who are in favor of the petition, and we'll hear from all those who are opposed to the petition. And then during testimony, you'll be asked to take an oath. And we'll continue back and forth, and if new information comes up or additional people wish to speak, you'll have that opportunity. At that point, we'll ask for questions from the board, and questions from the board can come at any time. And after listening to the testimony and the report of the engineer, the board will decide whether to grant the prayer of the petition or dismiss the petition. This is what the board considers in making that evaluation. Whether the board hereby finds that the proposed improvement is necessary, that it will be conducive to the public welfare, and that also finds that it is reasonably certain that the cost of the proposed improvements will be less than the benefits. And if the board grants the prayer of the petition, the Delaware County engineer will proceed with preparation of plans, reports, and individual schedules of assessments for the project. When plans are complete, a final hearing will be set, notification of the hearing will be given to the landowners, and the board will then consider the project in a second hearing, if that were to be the direction we ended up. With that, is there any comments from my fellow board members? Okay.
No.
With that, we'll turn it over to, please, Soil and Water. Who's doing the report? Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Daniel Barr, Delaware Soil and Water. I'll read the first hearing report into the record. First hearing report, Chancel Gate Watershed Drainage Petition per ORC 6131, September 30th, 2021. This report has been prepared for the preliminary hearing on a drainage improvement petition filed by Stephen Corvey and others on November 20th, 2020. The original petition has been signed by 7 individuals representing 5 of the 56 parcels in the watershed. The general location and course of the requested improvements are quoted from the petition as follows. In Delaware County, Concord Township, within the Chancel Gate watershed and generally following but not limited to the course and termini of the existing improvements. The following is the nature of the work petitioned as quoted from the petition. To generally improve drainage, both surface and subsurface, to a good and sufficient outlet by replacing, repairing, or altering existing improvements as required and/or creating new surface and subsurface drainage mains or laterals as requested by this petition. Petition process. This petition has been submitted according to Section 6131 of the Ohio Revised Code, which authorizes the Board of Commissioners to act on behalf of benefited property owners to make drainage improvements. If the Board of Commissioners decides to proceed with a project, the costs related to the improvements and the development of plans, reports, and schedules are assessed to the landowners in the watershed according to the benefit received to their watershed acreage. These special assessments will be added to the property taxes for each property and can be spread over a maximum of a 15-year period. Property owners may also choose to pay their assessment in a lump sum payment prior to placement on their property taxes. Additionally, the improvements will be placed on the Delaware County Drainage Maintenance Program in perpetuity per ORC Section 6137, and the annual maintenance assessment will appear on property tax statements as a special assessment in the same manner as the construction assessments. These annual maintenance assessments are generally in the range of 2 to 3% of the construction assessment. The decision to approve a petition project is a 3-step process. First, a viewing of the proposed improvement is conducted for the Commissioners to familiarize themselves with the watershed and general conditions. The Commissioners conducted the viewing for this project by drone video on May 10th, 2021. Next, a preliminary hearing is held to consider the initial feasibility of the proposal. It is this preliminary first hearing that is before us today. If this petition is approved, a final hearing will be conducted to further consider this petition. At that time, final details such as engineering plans and specifications, cost estimates, and a proposed schedule of assessments will be known. Existing conditions. The Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District and the Delaware County Engineers Office have made the following observations of the watershed using on-site evaluation and a review of available historic records, aerial photography, topographic mapping, and soils mapping. The Chancel Gate watershed is approximately 84 acres. The predominant land use within the watershed is currently rural residential. There are also areas of road right-of-way and woods. The drainage system does not appear to be functioning at or near optimum capacity due to a lack of comprehensive maintenance and the generally deteriorated condition of the infrastructure. The lack of a functional primary outlet for the existing ponds creates significant areas of ponded water. The lack of uniform surface grading downstream of the ponds contributes to a reduced flow capacity during high runoff events. The subsurface drain lacks a clearly identifiable outlet within the watershed. These conditions are indicators of an overburdened and aged drainage infrastructure. While the existing drainage system still provides some degree of drainage benefit, it does not appear to function as a good and sufficient outlet. Estimate of cost factors favorable, unfavorable, benefit versus cost. ORC 6131 requires the county engineer to state in a report factors favorable and unfavorable to a proposed project, estimate the cost of the project, and state an opinion as to whether the benefits of the project exceed the cost. The following information is presented for your consideration. Construction estimate. The project would begin on the east side of South Section Line Road and extend upstream to the northeast to the vicinity of the existing ponds to create a good and sufficient outlet for the petitioners. The primary items of work along the entire length would include surface drains shaping and grading, the installation of subsurface drains, the installation of a blind inlet, the installation of a grade stabilization structure, reconstruction of the pond outlet, brush and vegetation removal, and seeding and mulching of disturbed areas. If the project proceeds to a final hearing, portions of the watershed may be further divided into sections to better define the areas of work and the associated costs and benefits. This level of detail is not determined for the preliminary hearing and is only undertaken if the petition moves forward to a second or final hearing. The cost estimate as presented below reflects the entire requested project area. Construction, $56,899.00. Project administration, survey, and engineering, 15% of construction estimate at $8,534.85. And drainage maintenance first-year startup, 5% of construction estimate at $2,844.95, for a total project estimate of $68,278.80. Notes: it is important to understand that the above estimates are preliminary and made in the absence of a current detailed topographic survey of the project area. The above estimate does not contain a contingency amount. The amount of necessary contingency would be evaluated as part of the survey and engineering design of the project and added to the estimate presented at the final hearing. Contingency cost is typically estimated at 15 to 20% of the final construction estimate. Should the project fail to be approved at the final hearing, the benefiting landowners, as defined by ORC 6131, may still be responsible for the cost of project administration, survey, and engineering design. Assessments. If the project moves forward to the second hearing, the Ohio Revised Code instructs the county engineer to calculate the assessments to individual property owners based on the benefits received from the improvements for the various properties in the watershed. ORC 6131 states that uplands that have been removed from their natural state by deforestation, cultivation, artificial drainage, urban development, or other man-made causes shall be considered as benefited by an improvement required to dispose of the accelerated flow of water from the uplands. Benefits are further defined by the ORC as elimination or reduction of damage from flood, removal of water conditions that jeopardize public health, safety, or welfare, and increased value of land resulting from the improvement. It should be noted that property owners are only assessed for those improvements that are located downstream from their properties. No property is assessed for improvements located upstream. The public agencies that own rights of way for public roads and other public lands are also assessed for both construction and maintenance costs in the same manner as private property owners. Individual parcel assessments are not calculated for the preliminary hearing and are only calculated if the petition moves forward to a second or final hearing. Factors favorable, unfavorable. Factors favorable to the improvement: 1, improved surface and subsurface drainage in the watershed. 2, improved outlet for subsurface drainage components of a household sewage treatment systems and for residential drainage systems. 3, reduction of future deterioration of surface and subsurface drainage infrastructure. 4, annual inspections, maintenance, and protection of the improvement in perpetuity. Factors unfavorable to the improvement: 1, temporary land use disruption during construction. 2, cost of construction and maintenance may be a burden to some landowners. 3, removal of existing trees and brush in improvement area. Benefits versus cost. Assessments for property within the watershed are calculated based on the benefits derived. For residential properties, this increased value or benefit can be subjective and difficult to quantify. The lack of an adequate drainage outlet can negatively impact the condition of household sewage treatment systems, potentially limiting the value of the home for resale. Should the existing system fail, the cost to perform repairs or construct an alternate sewage treatment system can range from the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. It would also be reasonable to consider the cost of environmental degradation due to residential sewage treatment systems that may not be functioning properly. Other benefits that are commonly perceived as a result of drainage improvements focus on quality of life and positive neighborhood perception. Communities that have planned and maintained stormwater drainage infrastructure generally have higher resale values than those communities that are known to have a history of drainage problems or flooding. Conclusions. Based on all the information gathered and generated for this project, I believe this project is technically feasible and would adequately serve the project area's drainage needs. However, the testimony brought to the board by the landowners as to whether the benefits of this project exceed the costs should be given significant consideration in the decision to move forward with this project. Should the current petition be approved to proceed to a final hearing, the petition bond will be returned and detailed plans, specifications, estimated costs, and a schedule of assessments would be prepared. Additionally, a benefit versus cost analysis will also be performed to further determine the feasibility of advancing this proposed project.
Thank you very much. Any questions by fellow board members?
Nope.
Okay. With that, thank you. With that, we will transition to those who are speaking for, and then we will, the opportunity for those who are speaking in opposition. When you come up, I will ask you to give your name, your address, and the lot number if you can identify it. And then at that point, I will swear you in. So I'll open it up for anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the petition. Okay, I think the gentleman in blue had his hand up first, so I'm going to go with you.
Thank you for having me today. Stephen Corby, my address is, it's Stephen with a PH, C-O-R-V as in Victor I. 6138 Chancel Gate. Thank you, appreciate that.
And you know your lot number by chance?
No, it had an address.
It's on the map.
Oh, is it on the map? Yeah, okay. It's 42.
42.
42?
Yes.
Very well.
And actually, are you ready? I'm sorry.
Let me swear you in.
Sure.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you. So anyways, my name is Stephen Corby, 6138 Chancel Gate. So I actually started the petition. The petition, I started it late last summer. I started with the township, and then I proceeded on to Larry Tornis, who did the soil evaluations. And then they got me pointed in the direction of Delaware County Soil and Water. What had happened was we had large amounts of rain, up to about 4 inches at a time. And when I went out to the property, because I don't live there yet, I own the lot. My plan was to build. When I went out there, I had noticed the pond was extremely high and overflown. It was overflowing. And water was just, at that point, it was just going everywhere. It was going all through the other properties behind. It was up into my property quite a bit, and I'll go through some other pictures here in a second. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, just flip into one of the other pictures. Next.
These are all on your property?
Yeah, and or abutting to it. Yeah, so here's the pond. So this is from my backyard looking at the pond. So you can see where the shoreline would have been and how far back it up is now. Could you go maybe to the next one or back one?
Back one?
Yeah, let's try back one. Yeah, so the shoreline is probably supposed to be out there about 5 feet to where the edge of the moss or where that algae would be, and it's that far up in. And everything where I walked up to get to that point was all spongy, soggy, and very swampy. To the southwest of there is where the pond actually drains, and at that point, the water was running, it was seeking its own outlet anywhere it could find it. So that's when I realized we have a problem. So that was in the spring. So fast forward to July, it had been about 90 degrees for most of the month. It was pretty hot with no rain. So I went out to the property. The pond was still high, but I figured it was 90 degrees for the last, month. Well, I drove my truck back there and it sunk. Not there, but just a little ways back. So I had to get it hooked out of there and pulled out. So I looked into it a little further, and if you could go to the next picture maybe. One more. Okay. So across the pond there's a dock on the property behind me. It's completely covered in water. I don't know if you can see a couple go to the right there. Just about. Right in the middle of the picture almost, at the top of the pond. Yeah, right there. So that's actually a dock. So that shows you how high the water is.
When was this picture taken?
That was in spring of 20. So can I, just let me know when I can move to the next picture if you're finished. Ready? Okay. Yeah, if you could move to another picture, please, and the next, and the next. And then, yeah, okay, so this line here, where you see a little water stream, this is actually the area, if you follow the dotted line on this paper right here, this is the area where this water is supposed to drain, and it goes, it's a section line road, it's supposed to go under the road. So that line of water right there, that's supposed to be where the drainage goes. If you could go to the next picture, please. And then the next one. So it stops there. Now at this point, we're in the summer now, we're out of the spring. And about where that water stops, there's an old field tile there with a drain grate under that water. And there's different tiles that run through all the way through that channel to get the water out with different drain grates through there. And they're all buried and covered and just nothing's draining. So we just don't have an outlet. Just actually with the report that was just given from Delaware County Soil and Water, it kind of stole my show. I mean, we just don't have an outlet for the water to go anywhere. And we really need it to happen because there's just the standing water and the overflow. Well, right now it's keeping me from building. Yeah, I can't build a house, you know, on a property that just, there's no drainage for the water. I can put 4 sump pumps in and it's just gonna push it out and come right back in. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, I want to get this petition going so I can get building out there on the property. So in that July time, when I also went back out there, that's when I had Delaware County Soil and Water come out. And they actually came out probably in August, end of August. And they had noticed where the rut was, where my truck had gotten pulled out, and it was still wet and muddy. So we had quite a bit of time where the land could have dried up, and we just didn't get anywhere. The other reason, I mean, as far as to the public welfare, I mean, if we get too much water in these septic systems, they're just going to end up overflowing and going in. They're going to ruin the septic systems, and then it's going to start costing money to have to replace septic systems. So now we're into sump pumps, septic systems, and we still don't have anywhere for the water to go. So another reason why I got the petition going. And so what I did was I didn't even really know the process. I went around to the neighbors that just surround the pond because we're the ones that are really affected by it. And found out from some of the others that, you know, how the water comes down through this map. Here, it starts up in the woods here, and it just comes all the way down through these properties. So we've got quite a bit of acres that just flow into these 2 ponds, and then everybody else ties into that pond where our 5 properties are connected behind the house. And then goes on towards Chancellery. Actually, if you go back to that picture, I forgot about my PDF I just sent earlier. The blue line represents the flow of the water and how it's supposed to flow out of the watershed. So just past the pond, which is actually in the middle of the watershed there, we just don't have an outlet from there, and it's just backing up everywhere. I also got a document from the Department of Natural Resources and Agriculture, and it talks about site conditions and things like that. And, you know, it says that the ponds need to have runoff from the design for the safety of stormwater to pass through a natural constructed auxiliary spillway or a combination principal spillway to move water off, you know. So for the public welfare, I think that would be a great idea if we can get improvement here. We wouldn't have as much standing water, less mosquitoes. I think it'd just be safer for the public. And in this case, I mean, I guess, and for my testimony, I think the benefits outweigh the cost because I can build a house that's going to cost a lot more than what the improvement's going to be. It's going to improve, Delaware County Soil and Water said it's going to improve all of our property values as far as that goes, and it's just going to be better for the community. Standing water is just no good. It just, you know, doesn't work, and we just need to try to get an improvement.
Mr. Corey, you mentioned less mosquitoes. So you're indicating mosquitoes are a problem?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Now, you're going to have mosquitoes because you have a pond, right? But, I mean, when I talk about wet, I mean, it is the whole lot. The whole lot from, you know, is pretty much wet. Just from, I shouldn't say the whole lot. The back half lot's completely wet. You know, I got right now I have a crew that goes back there and mows for me, and there's times where they can't even get back there and mow. So, and I think the picture of the pond where, you know, it shows that the water's up over the dock, shows that it's just not draining. We just like to get an outlet down through there, just to move water through. If you would really consider that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the petition? You had your hand up first, so your name, address, and lot number.
My name is Doug Grout. My wife Michelle and I own the property at 6115 South Section Line Road, which is parcel number 50 on the map that you were given.
Number 50?
Mhm.
Okay. Raise your
And
right hand.
We are the owners.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you. If you could put that picture back up there. Thank you. So about 5 years ago, my wife and I purchased the property in foreclosure. We bought it from Huntington Bank. There were a number of issues with the home that was given to us, and one of the issues that Huntington Bank showed us was there is a transfer pump that is southeast of on our property. It's on the southeast section of our property. It's about 400 feet of transfer line that takes it down to the creek of what Mr. Corvée was showing you. When we purchased the home, we had the excavator who actually excavated the pond itself when the property was developed. He basically tore up the old, it was, I think, a 2.5-inch pipe that was in there, the transfer pump, and we put in a new 4.5-inch pipe or 4-inch pipe of PVC pipe versus the corrugated kind, which roots and everything else can get in. So we put in a very quality line. Huntington Bank paid for the new transfer pump because the pump itself was burned up. That was a part of our negotiation with them. So we incurred, right out of the gate, about $2,000 from the excavator fee to tear up the old line, and put up a new line. I believe Huntington indicated the pump they put in was roughly in the neighborhood of about $350. Once that was done, it started pumping water out immediately, down into that ditch or drainage area or watershed or whatever we want to refer it to. And right then and there is when my wife and I noticed that, we're pumping water into something that's already saturated. And we really didn't have anywhere else to take it. Our next door neighbor, which is Alex and Paula, they live on 49. They're unable to be here today. They are elderly, senior citizens. They're not really going out because of COVID. But he's had some damage in his basement. Brought him over. I showed him what we were doing or what we had done. And that's when he had indicated to me that they've had a water problem there for probably close to 7 years. His recollection, well, that was 5 years ago. So from my standpoint, this is now at least a 5 to 12-year issue based on what my neighbor has experienced. I know he's had to do some work in his basement from a standpoint of cleaning it out because he had water backed up into his basement. My wife and I have personally not had that problem, but if you look at the map at parcel 50 that comes from the U-shaped pond, about 3/4 to 80% of the way in the springtime, water gets almost 80% up to our house, meaning that when I walk out into my backyard, all I got to do is go about 20 feet into my backyard, and I'm now spongy, meaning that water is now coming up and soaking my shoes.
You use the mic so we can get it recorded.
Oh, sorry. So obviously, when I can only go 20 or 30 feet out into my yard and it's spongy in the springtime, and I've got a brand new transfer pump in there, there's nowhere I can put the water. Last year, I replaced, if you look at where the U-shaped pond is, where that dotted line goes out to where the line follows the section line, on my property is where that emergency drainage is out of the pond into the watershed itself. Well, that was that old 4-inch corrugated black pipe that was completely disintegrated. The willow trees that were there had gone right into it. I removed that. I put in a new 4.5-inch pipe, PVC, like I did with the transfer line, so the roots wouldn't get to it and destroy it. That takes water out of it, but when Mr. Corvée had the Delaware County engineers and soil and water conservation came out last August and July time period, they clearly looked at it and said, this is not a big enough pipe. If everything else above you was working properly, which it was not at the time, there's no way that with everything working properly above this drainage point, there's no way that this 4-inch pipe. So they estimate that anywhere from an 8 to 12-inch pipe is what is needed. So almost 3 times what is currently there is what they estimate to be an accurate pipe size just to drain it out of the pond to get to the watershed, which is part of the problem, which can't drain water fast enough even if we had the proper infrastructure in those 2 ponds already in place. So from my wife and I standpoint, obviously we have not experienced anything into our basement yet, but we're concerned. And this morning, well, my boys mowed my 6 acres yesterday. My son went by the transfer pump and basically knocked the lid over. And he came in, he says, "Dad, the transfer pump must not be working." I'm like, "Why you say that?" He's like, "Well, the reservoir is full of water." So here I am in September, and we had a very dry summer, and I have a transfer pump reservoir that now the third pump, because when I replace this one, it'll now be the third pump in 5 years that I've had to replace. And, you know, I was just telling Stephen, it's like, I'm at a dilemma now. It's like, why to replace it? Because I don't have anywhere to send the water to, and I'm just burning up pumps. And these pumps are not cheap. You know, they're anywhere from, well, the last one I bought was a little over $300, but the one I'm looking at now is a 5-horsepower pump. It pumps 1,000 gallons an hour out of this. But the problem is I'm still going back to, I don't have any place to pump it to. And that's the problem. My pumps are constantly running because the saturation doesn't leave. Yes, I send the water 400 feet down, you know, to this grate, but with all this being saturated below it, that's where my yard is. So all of it just comes right back in my yard to begin with. So I'm at a catch-22. I can't win for losing. So when Mr. Corvée came to us and talked about his problem on number 49, he's basically my backyard neighbor. His situation my situation is almost mirrored of him. So basically my backyard from about halfway to the pond and then over to the east side that goes into his yard, it's completely unusable property, in my opinion. We can't develop on it. He can't build a house on it. There's things that my wife and I would like to do back there, but we can't because we know that we have a water issue. So we don't look at it from a standpoint of the benefit being increase of property value. I just don't want the water to do any more damage and decrease the value of my property. So we believe that the benefit here far outweighs any cost. And to go along with what you guys were talking about mosquitoes this year have been horrible. And I don't know much about mosquitoes and why they grow, but I do know that they need water. And back there we have lots of it. So that's pretty much my testimony. I can take pictures. I mean, I have pictures of everything that we've gone through, but Mr. Corvé's pictures were pretty relevant and on par with the situation of what's going on in that lower Shape-U pond, which my house backs up to. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come up.
Hello, I'm David Reno. I live at 6066 Chancel Gate, which is lot 44 on the map.
44?
Yes.
Could you repeat your name? I did not get it.
Oh, sorry, David Reno, R-E-N-O.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Okay, so I'll start with, before he even met Mr. Corvée, my wife and I were theorizing that we were having water problems due to the new construction. There's a large, high-density development north of Chancel Gate. And we got a hold of, I believe it was Dan, I'm bad with names, that came out and walked it with us and explained how the new development actually reduced the watershed some, and the problem was downstream with the, what we're calling the U-shaped pond. If you could bring the map up,
Hold up your pictures.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was just talking to the map for a second. It's okay. So our property, number 44, is it's the biggest, I believe it's the biggest single lot in the watershed involved besides the development's number 26 acres. We have 7.5 acres there. And we have the, I guess we'll call it a V-shaped pond. So what we saw was a lot of the water coming from the woods overfilling our pond because our pond couldn't drain to the U-shaped pond. Also, on our property, right along the edge of our property is a very long ditch that feeds from the circle, and I believe the other houses up around there are supposed to feed through it or do feed through it. There's been some controversy about what that ditch is for, but it is very active during the rain, and that ditch drains back to the U-shaped pond. Okay, so yeah, now bring my pictures up, please. So I've got some pictures from, I believe, April 3rd of this year. Just to show how our pond was overfilling and flooding. This isn't the greatest picture. This is just showing how soggy it is. This is the area between the two ponds. On the right side there, you'll see the tip of the U-shaped pond. Next one, please. That's our pond there, and oops,
Oops, did I go back to, sorry.
just pick one, it's fine. Yeah, that's good. So that's our pond there, and you can see the tree there in the water. That is supposed to be the edge of the pond. Same with that one. It's okay. And you can see how it's kind of flooding there. You can also see some of the ruts. We're trying to mow it. Basically, in the spring, that whole back of my property, you can't get to it or mow it or take care of it because it's just so soggy. I don't know how many times I've unstuck my wife mowing with our zero turn back there because it gets stuck in the water or in the mud. Next one, please. That's kind of the same shot. Next one of the woods. Okay, so there's the woods, number 26. And their water runs into our pond, and the pond edge should be kind of where that bush is in the middle of the picture. And you can see the woods is cutting its own path in kind of a haphazardly couple different ways. And that whole area between the woods and our pond floods in the spring. Is there any more? There's a closer up shot again. The edge of the pond should be where the bush or tree is sticking up there on the right. So it's all very, not just a little bit of sogginess, it's flooded. And furthermore, not showing there, if you can look near the top of the picture, the kind of dead cattails there, that whole area is very soggy. It doesn't flood quite this bad, but gets very soggy. And that's where the water drains from lot 17, supposed to come through there into our pond, I believe. And that's call that just kind of like the marshlands in the spring. You can't really mow that either. Okay. But I've tried to take care of what I could myself. But the bottom line problem is if the U-shaped pond doesn't drain, my pond can't overflow into it. And I think it was June, give or take, this year, I actually bought a small trencher backhoe I've always kind of wanted, but this was kind of a point that the final straw in the getting. I bought a small backhoe and trenched out 200 feet between the two ponds and replaced that collapsed corrugated pipe with 4-inch PVC. So that let my pond drain into the other pond. But again, if the other pond stays above that level, it doesn't help. And yeah, I think that's it. Sorry. And, I'm not an attorney, but I did want to mention owner of lot 16 who signed the petition can't be here because of health reasons. I know he's had some problems with his basement flooding. He lives very close to the pond. My wife and I are fortunate our house is uphill enough from the problem. We haven't had any problems that I know of, at the house, but again, about half of our property is not usable in the spring because of the flooding. I believe, yeah, that's it. But again, I think it would be a good thing to do, and as a person that's probably going to get a pretty good chunk of the bill because of our 7.5 acres, I support it and would like to see it done. We can take advantage of our own yard.
Okay. Any other? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Speaking in favor?
Well, I'm nor in favor or nay of, but I think if these problems are corrected, my problem is going to be resolved.
You're going to have to come up here to speak. Right now we're taking in favor, so I'm going to assume you're speaking in favor.
Let's go with in favor.
Okay, your name, sir.
My name is Ralph D. Gannon. The neighbors know me as Dave. My property is number 17.
And your address?
6054 Chancel Gate Drive. And if you can see...
Let me ask for you again, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
You proceed.
If you can pull up the map that we all got into the mail. Or we got out front here. And again, my parcel is 17, and you can see where the water's coming back from parcel 26, and then it runs along the back of my property line and then comes over towards property 44. My problem started back in 2014. Previous owners of property 44 enlarged that pond, and they used the dirt to build the property up between mine and his property line to try and reduce the amount of sludge and mud, and so he could cut his grass. I can email the pictures, but I just wanted to show you, you can tell, once they done that, they put a 4-inch line in, so whenever his pond fills up, you can see where it stops at my property line. So my water can't go anywhere.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that you leave that with the clerks.
Sure.
Okay.
And then 2014, we had a bad freeze. My leach field froze. It cost me almost $10,000 to get my septic system back up and running. I had to have the health department come out and review it because waste come up out of the aeration system. And I was up like 24 hours pumping 500 gallons of water every 3 minutes because it didn't have anywhere to go. So I think once the flow and whenever the ponds fill up with the 4-inch pipe, it starts backing up onto my property. So I think with the correction and the correct flow of the ponds will reduce the water that's backed up onto my property. And again, back between 26 and my property, MI built a bunch of homes back there. So it did reduce the flow, but it created a lot of puddles. And again, mosquitoes were built up. I keep that area, even though it's not my property, I keep it trimmed to keep the mosquitoes down. But there is a problem between 26 and the MI homes puddling and creating mosquitoes. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, and I can leave these. And I can also send them JPEG if need be. Alrighty.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines.
That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak in support of the petition, please come forward.
How you doing?
Good. I'm going to ask for your name. I'm also going to ask you to move the mask so you can be heard, otherwise you'll be able to hear.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Your name?
Name is Panormitis Elenis, E-L-E-N-I-S. I'm at property 4686 Canterbury Circle, and I'm...
Your address again, I didn't get it.
I'm sorry, 4686 Canterbury Circle.
Okay. And your lot number?
Lot number 9.
Let me swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Proceed.
All right. So I just thought I'd give you a little story, or a little backstory. So I've been at my property for a little over 10 years. Once we moved in, there's been a kind of a running joke with our neighbors, some of the older neighbors that no longer there. How's your swimming pool doing? All of our basements would flood. Mine flooded. We eventually had to actually spend a considerable amount of money to be able to waterproof it, just so that we can actually put things in our basement. The whole point of that is that I know that we're not really connected to the lake itself, but we've always had water issues in our neighborhood. The people at the south side of the Canterbury Circle part of our property, they were always considered the dry side, and as you started going north, it started getting wetter, so we joked that we were the wetlands. I'm always getting stuck in my easement by the street. It's actually turned into a little bit of a wildlife habitat, so my kids seem to love it, but they always come back and tell me I accidentally ran over some moles or some frogs. Always getting stuck up front. So I just wanted to leave you with a little bit of that information that it's wet. It's always wet. There's always been poor drainage, regardless of whether it's been the lake or whether it's been the street. We were actually fortunate enough about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, to have Concord Township come down with some backhoes and try to retrench our easement. Still, to that avail, there's been no success to it. So the drainage seems to always be an issue in key pockets of the wetlands, so to speak. Let's see, what else did I want to be able to touch upon? I did want to say that, I know that over the past couple of years, the neighborhood kids would kind of go and fish in the U-shaped lake, and, Steve would be more than welcoming to let them, come on, come fish. So, I do feel that it's very neighborly to be able to try to support their cause, so I can get a good neighbor to come in and build his house. If he can't build his house, then, what are good neighbors for, right? That is it. I know I had some more points, but these guys actually had a lot more information. I just wanted to come show some support.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the petition? Yes.
My name is Joel Rhodes. My address is 5975 South Section Line Road. If I can approach the screen, I can tell you the lot number. It's like 48.
48? Mr. Rose, you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you, President Merrill, members of the Board of Commissions. I appreciate the time to speak today. My position, while it's in favor, is perhaps a little different in that my property, where my family and I have lived since 2003, is at the upper edge of the watershed area, and only a small portion of the property is included. And while I'm very sympathetic to the situation involved, my position is simply that my property probably isn't really contributing very much and likely should not be a part of that watershed area. As you can see, if you can see the red property lines on the drawing in front of you, a small portion of the wooded area and a little bit of my lawn section of the barn are all that are a part of it. And while I support my neighbor's petition, again, I just don't feel that my property is part.
Just a point of information, should we move forward, a much more accurate survey will be done to determine that. So that'll be a function of drainage once it's determined, but that'll be determined at the second hearing. Correct, guys? So, okay?
Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Anyone else would like to speak in support of the petition? Okay. Anyone here who would like to speak in up? First of all, before I do that, any questions from my fellow board members?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. With that, sir, you had your hand up, come on up.
Hello, my name is Daryl Miller. I live at 6164 Chancellgate Drive, lot number 41.
Number 41?
Yep.
And you spoke so fast, your first name again.
Sorry, Daryl Miller.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Proceed.
So I have a civil engineering degree from Ohio State, and I've been an engineer in the state of Ohio for 17 years. My main area of focus is utility infrastructure, drainage, and storm sewer projects. I design storm sewer systems for both public and private development projects all across the state. So I understand everything that has been told today. The reason the pond's having issues, and there are many reasons for this meeting, is because it doesn't drain properly. It was built in the neighborhood, it wasn't built right. A catch basin with a series of holes for outlining the different storm events should have been installed. Instead, a little simple yard drain was installed with an undersized outlet. So there is drainage issues with the pond, I'm not denying that at all, but it wasn't built properly and it's a single point source release issue. If the pond were to drain properly, there's 14 feet of fall from the pond outlet to the culvert, and I have this map here that I can leave. That shows the contours in the pond outlet and the culvert and how much fall there is.
Can you go back to speak so we can hear you?
So there's 14 feet of fall from the pond outlet to the culvert, which should provide plenty of fall and drainage for the property, for the pond. So if the water were to be released from the pond, it shouldn't have any issues draining. The map that was sent out with notice was defined as the watershed for the pond. While that's correct in principle, it is far from being the actual drainage area for this pond. We don't have enclosed storm sewers anywhere in this development. It's all ditch. Nothing actually drains to this pond other than the Reno property to the north and the 4 properties that are connected to the pond. Oh, and I'm sorry, I have another one that shows what should have been installed in the pond. Sorry. This is
Just don't speak, you can hand it to them. Get back with the mic before you speak so we can hear you.
So I have a catch basin there that's a typical installation for a pond like this that should have been installed when the pond was built. So the map there I show is outlining, I know it's different from the watershed, but it outlines everybody that's associated with the downstream, that's only connected to the downstream of the pond. So like my property sits at 938, the pond's at 928. I'm 10 feet higher than the pond. Nothing that hits my property even goes to the pond. Everything goes downstream. So proving that there's nothing that goes to the pond from my property or a lot of the properties that are downstream there. So as for the rest of the watershed that's for this pond, like I said, we do not have any storm sewers in this neighborhood that actually go to the pond. The only incoming pipe was to the pond from the north, which Mr. Reno had explained from his property. Everything else travels via ditch, and I agree the ditches are terrible, but as from my understanding, the ditches aren't part of this project. So if they want to include ditches, maybe we have another conversation, but the ditches aren't, included in the project. So everything drains via ditch in the area. I just don't see this as a regional issue, but it's a point source issue. The pond just needs to be able to drain. I agree. It is an issue, but it just wasn't built properly. And I think just putting a catch basin on it would resolve a lot of the issues and allow it to drain. So there's 4 owners according to the auditor's website, there's 4 owners of the pond, and then the Reno property to the north are the properties that actually contribute runoff to the project or to the pond. And I believe the only ones that should be subject to the petition, if the county's not going to pay for it. Now, honestly, I think when it was built, the county should have been a little bit more proactive in the design and construction phase, and probably should have built it correctly, because if it's serving as a retention pond, everyone sees retention ponds when they drive in subdivisions. You got all these incoming pipes that come in that take all the surface drainage from the whole area to the pond. That's not what we have here. So in conclusion, the majority of the property owners with this letter and this petition, I don't believe should be the ones that have to pay for it. I feel like a bad neighbor saying this, and I'm not. This could be Mother Teresa up here making this petition, and I have the same stance. I just don't think it's a regional issue. It's more of a point source issue. And I do want Steve to build his house. I'm not, against Steve or anything, and, I hope that it gets resolved. I just don't think it's a regional issue. I think it's more of an isolated issue. So, a lot of the properties that would get assessed are not gonna see any benefit. They'll see zero benefit at all, because the ditches aren't part of this. It's the pond and increasing the size of the pond and putting a correct outlet on it. So, to assess somebody that's gonna see zero benefit, I don't know that that's, is what we should do. So, thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask someone from Soil and Water to come up if they would to answer. The purpose of this is to get a good outlet. Does that include the ditches or not? Is that part of this project?
So, since there were no signatories in Canterbury Circle itself along there'll be no work that will go involving the road ditches there. The work that would be proposed would be the yellow and black line on the map, roughly at this time.
So the ditches aren't the issue?
No, just the lack of an outlet overall. Okay. So.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't the space between the 2 ponds, wouldn't you be creating a ditch there?
We would certainly look at a swale or some way to make certain there's good grade between them. So
Okay.
we'll certainly look at that.
Okay, so ditches might be part of the ultimate solution.
Surface grading, yeah, any
Surface
sort of
grading,
surface grading
grading
is
on
going to be looked
quality.
at as part of this, yes.
And I had a question on the detention pond. I mean, is it feasible to create a detention pond at this point?
Those
Out of
ponds.
those two ponds?
So those ponds, actually, they have no stormwater design to them. They were built as recreational ponds. They were not built as part of a retention, detention, as part of your normal subdivision that you would see today. They were simply built as a recreational function to them. So the biggest function for them as part of this project is simply water in, water out.
So converting them to a detention pond isn't realistic.
It would serve no benefit.
Okay.
No.
Now, was this area, Canterbury and Chancellgate in particular, developed before subdivision regulations required the detention ponds?
I believe
Must have
Canterbury, that section down through there, yes, it would have been beforehand. And then the majority of the homes that surround the ponds, those were just large lot rural development that we see across the county in multiple places, not any sort of true subdivision curb and gutter.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I believe Brett has something to share with us.
Yeah, Brett Bacon, Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District. I think I'd just like to provide clarification on one point that was raised regarding the ponds and their construction. Those ponds were built by private landowners. There would have been no county involvement, no soil and water involvement in those ponds, and thus no county inspection of how they were constructed. So there certainly wouldn't have been any county funds used to build those ponds. The county engineer would not have seen nor reviewed nor approved of plans of those ponds. They were just simply built by private landowners, and the laws governing pond construction outside of township zoning, which may or may not have applied in this case, there just really are no laws or regulations that govern construction of ponds of this type.
To summarize, the county really had no authority.
Correct. No authority to approve or disapprove of the ponds. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that clarification, is anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Sharon Cook.
Good, Sharon.
I'm here with my husband, Fred Cook. We live at 4820 Hyatt's Road. I believe it's number 50 on the map. It's actually in the Ray Gurdon subdivision, not Chancellgate, but we have been yellow lined in it.
Okay, need you raise your right hand, please?
Oh, sure.
The other right hand.
My other one.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Proceed.
I'm in opposition because the 4 or 5 lots that are petitioning that have the ponds on their property, which are private property, private ponds, not community or county or township. So that's why I'm basically protesting the part that the community, that they've included everyone in the watershed to be, out of the 56 people, to spread the cost of the maintenance on their property. We've lived on our property for over 30 years. We've had our share of problems, and we've dealt with them as far as replacing tiles and removing trees. The Ray Gurdon, before after we had lived there a few years, he actually did have to put a ditch in between the Hyatt's Road frontline houses and when they put in the Chancellgate cul-de-sacs and the property all back in there. That did help some. Some people, still planted trees in it and blocked some of the water flow, but it did help a lot. My biggest protest, though, like I said, is we've addressed all of our issues on our property. We don't really have any water issues on our property. And when we did a few years ago, it was mostly because our existing drain tiles were the corrugated. our maple trees had gotten into the lines, clogged everything up, and turned our backyard into a little soupy mess. After my husband cut down all the trees and replaced all the lines, everything was fine. We did not ask any of our existing neighbors or to help us pay for anything on our property. We've, like I said, over 30 years, managed to handle all of our own property. We also had our property surveyed before we decided to build there over 30 years ago, 1989. And it was suggested by our surveyors where to put our house because of it was all farmland still at that time, even Chancel Gate wasn't there. And the way that the underground tiles from the farmland was running. We got all that surveyed and made our decision whether we wanted to purchase that property and where we wanted to sit the house. And we were glad we did because other people didn't obviously do some of their survey, didn't put their houses as far back as we did, and didn't have as good luck with their basements as we have. So we were really glad that we did that. People that buy properties on pond, and some of them are community ponds, we have also looked into that, and there's usually a shared cost for those properties around the ponds, but not outside of that. So I believe that, if they want to do that, they should share the cost among themselves, the people that are in the pond community there, the 4 or 5, or even if some of the people outside of the blue area with the ponds, if they're having water problems and they want to join in voluntarily, that should be up to the homeowner and their parcel. We're totally outside of that. It's just not our parcel, so that's why we object. And I was speaking for myself and for my husband. So. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition? Okay, I'm going to open up to my fellow commissioners. Do you have any questions or comments?
No further questions at this point.
No.
If there is there anyone else who has any testimony that, as long as it's not redundant, but, okay, you're welcome to come and speak, and you've already been sworn in. You've already been sworn in.
Okay, yeah, so just on the last young lady's comment, so when I originally brought this, it wasn't to make, 40 households pay for this. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. I actually thought it was just the people who surrounded the pond or who had water issues. So as far as, asking everyone, I didn't even know, matter of fact, I didn't even know anybody that was inside this yellow line was going to receive this document. I didn't know. I just went to the people, surround us, because we just can't go back there and dig a trench, because the drainage for all this water, as you can see on the map, goes all the way through to Section Line Road. So I just can't go rent a backhoe and start cutting through, Joe neighbor, and, he's like, what are you doing? So that's why we've asked the commissioners to hopefully come together to help us just get something going to move the water out there. And, it's assessed on our taxes for over 15 years. That's what the petition said, and I get it. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, we weren't looking for, people outside of the problem to fix the problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead.
Doug Grout again on South Section Line. It's number 50 on mine, but it's number 11 on that map. I just want to, I heard everybody's testimony, and I just want people to understand, based on what we were told by the engineer's office, even the excavator that came out and helped us dig our 300-foot transfer line tiles up so we could put in a new line. When this was developed, these ponds are not retention ponds. They were not developed that way, is what we were told. But since that time, the number of houses that have gone into this red area, the ponds and the drainage system itself cannot support the number of homes and the number of families that are in this community. That was told to us by the people who came out last July, August, based on, this was originally given to us when we were looking at and talking with him, is that even the people here that were naysayers, that were are against it, have even came out and said, whether it's a ditch problem, whether they had to create a ditch behind their house in between Chancel Gate and Hyatt's, fundamentally, this general area here just does not have the proper drainage to move water that comes down over to the Scioto River, which is where it needs to go. And the engineer was absolutely correct. Water is going to go that way, whether it wants to or not. So our pond, which is the U-shaped pond that backs up to 11, which backs up to number 42, Mr. Corvey's, because that water can't go anywhere, it's finding its own path, which does affect everybody else down here that have the clay tiles going to that dotted line out to South Section Line Road. So yes, while the people on Hyatt's are not contributing to the problem that we're experiencing, I believe that everybody in this area right now does not have the proper drainage system in order to whisk away Mother Nature's wrath, whatever that would be. And that's the only thing I wanted to fundamentally say, is that even the people that are naysayers have run into problems, but obviously their problems have been much less because of their distance away from the ponds and the clay tile watershed that is supposed to take it underneath South Section Line over to the Scioto River. Thank you.
Just make a point of clarification. We are, the commissioners are, by the state law, required to do this, and we have guidelines that we have to stay within. So please understand that's the process. We're following the process. Is there any other comments from my fellow commissioners?
If someone from Soil and Water could come up. Just a quick question here. Could you address the concern that the people having the ponds created the problem and therefore other people are being asked to pay for it, though? How do you respond to that?
Whether there are ponds there or not, I think just the general lack of grading and of a functional subsurface drain to those lots, there's still an issue, whether the ponds exist or not. There's just a general lack of an outlet for them to make use of.
And so the map that you've set forth and your preliminary drawing right now would include the correction of this for everyone, even those outside of the ponds?
It would provide to the petitioners a good and sufficient outlet to them. They may receive, by virtue of that, a better outlet as kind of a secondary effect of the project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call for the clerk to read the closing of the public hearing.
Excuse me. Resolution number 21-915, in the matter of closing the public hearing for consideration of the Chancel Gate Drainage Improvement Petition filed by Stephen Corvey and others.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-915. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Bitton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
And I would also call for the clerk to read in the matter of proceeding with the petition.
Resolution number 21-916, in the matter of proceeding with the petition for the Chancel Gate Drainage Improvement filed by Stephen Corvey and others, and ordering the Delaware County Engineer to proceed with the preparation of reports, plans, and schedules for the proposed improvement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion?
I believe we have received, well, I know we've received enough evidence that there really is a problem, and it does extend far from where the ponds are, and as Soil and Water just testified to, and I think we need more information, but the only way we can get to that is to have a second hearing. So I would proceed with the petition.
Just a quick comment. I agree with Commissioner Lewis. I think it's pretty clear there is a problem here. Everyone in the watershed contributes water to the outlet, and the outlet needs to be cleared out and fixed. So now, again, this is preliminary watershed. There'll be refinements to it, refined estimates and so on in the process. So But I do think we need to move forward.
The other thing I would add to that is, the three criteria that we're asked to look at, I think the compelling arguments were made today that we should proceed to a second hearing, and that's where a lot of information will be added. It'll clarify a lot of things that were discussed today. But I remind everyone that the proposed improvement is necessary is one, but the two that I think are most compelling today, conducive to the public welfare. Obviously, the mosquito issue is one part of that, but water standing is another part of that. Basement's having an issue. The board also finds it is reasonable that the cost of proposed improvements will be less than the benefits. And we'll determine that through the second hearing, but I think there's enough information today that believes that that's a likely possibility. And with that, I also would support it. And with no other comment, I'll call for the vote.
Vote on motion 21-916. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye. Thank you. We do need to go back into executive. Is the list that's on there still accurate? Anything that needs to be changed?
Yes, all four. Yes. Resolution number 21-917, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment, compensation of a public employee or public official for pending or imminent litigation for collective bargaining.
So moved.
Second, Commissioner Lewis?
Oh, second.
Motion made in second. Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-917. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye. With that, we're now in